This is Vic Mensa. This is my cover shoot with the Quintessential Gentleman. Prioritizing and managing your mental health can be difficult, man, in any industry, in the modern world with so much distraction and so much instant gratification, so many push and pulls on your dopamine and attention. Staying in the gym helps me. I'm early with it. Like I was in the gym at 5 a.m. today. Most days I'm in at 5 a.m. now. It was 6 a.m. before. Meditating, for sure. I would say meditating is the main way I prioritize my mental health. Also, constant vigilance of my thoughts and exercise and restraint, not allowing myself to get into bickering and back and forth. You know what I mean? Just working on having grace for myself and others. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, was one of the first Stoics. He wrote this book called Meditations that helps me a lot. It's basically his life's ruminations on how to deal with human beings and emotions. And I was re-listening to it the other day. I was dealing with some super difficult people, that I work with. That from my perspective, there's a lot of resentment and just the relationship isn't great. And I remember something Marcus Aurelius said in Meditations. He was like, the people you deal with today will be jealous, they'll be resentful, they'll be bitter, they'll be hateful. Um, Treat them like you would treat a sparring partner. When you're in the ring, you do what you got to do. You don't turn your back to them. But when you leave the ring, you don't go home mad that your sparring partner stole on you. You know what I'm saying? You'd be like, man, this is what you are to my life right now. And that helped me a lot because I think something that I'm working on for my mental health to help me prioritize my mental health is to deal with people differently now than I did in the past because I have more information. And so in a situation like that where somebody's upsetting me, it might be choosing to continue to be kind and continue to try to be graceful in perpetuity, And my girl, she was like, no, because you need to drop your nuts. You need to like really, show them who's boss and what's what, Um, I just don't know. I don't think that that's really what's best for me right now. It's like I've done that so much, and had a large period of my life where I amassed reputations of like, being an asshole. And not that I'm choosing my behavioral patterns necessarily based on what other people will think, but I think in the past I felt like the more powerful thing to do for me might have been to exert some kind of control over somebody else. And right now, I feel like the more powerful thing for me to do is to exert control over myself. So, what prompted my current process of growth? I would say it's rock bottom. Rock bottom is a beautiful place to build something, though. And what better to build than yourself? Because when you have it all, when you're on top of the world, like, you can get away with a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? But when you fucked up, and you don't have anything anymore, then it's like you'll have to look in the mirror. You can't continue to get by treating people well because like they're on your payroll or something when you ain't got no money. You know what I mean? Nobody's on your payroll, and this shit will force you to grow. And in many ways, I'm grateful for that, man, because I gotta be, and I recognize that depression, to which I have a lifelong propensity, is the absence of gratitude. Times when I be very depressed is because I have no gratitude. Or the vicious cycle will be that state of depression will that state of depression will make it impossible for me to be grateful for basic things like the sunshine and a working body, a sound mind, freedom, food, water. Um, but if I can really focus on the things that that I'm grateful for, it helps my entire experience of life. And having less than you've had, losing things that you've become accustomed to will force you to be like, okay, well, I'm grateful for the shit that I wasn't even concerned with when I had a Maserati. You know, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I should be grateful for waking up with autonomy today, with the ability to make my own decisions, or being fed, or having parents or having siblings. You don't think about those things when you got mansion and Maserati because you like, you get sidetracked. You focused on material shit when you have it, but when you ain't got it, you gotta find, and you still wanna. When you don't have material things and you still want to have a good quality of life, then you got to learn how to be grateful for immaterial things. And I think that teaches you that those things are actually more valuable than material shit. Advice I would give to somebody at rock bottom right now is to find something to be grateful for. And I know that that could feel dismissive, or it can be difficult to see life that way when you are at rock bottom, or when you are in a state of depression. But it's a foolproof method. It's truly a foolproof method. And that doesn't mean that it's easy, but it can be an active practice. The statistics show that making a daily practice of writing a list of things you're grateful for invariably improves one's mental health. So even if you are at the lowest of lows, in a cell, locked down 10 to 18 hours a day, and eating honey buns and shit, just being in that cell and listing the things that you're grateful for daily, day in and day out, I promise you to make some kind of difference, though. So I do think, to somebody at rock bottom, find something to be grateful for. And something I have been telling myself for the past week or so is, don't judge the journey by the middle point. You don't know where this is going to end up. So I just keep trying to tell myself that when I'm unsatisfied or I'm upset with something in my life or a project I'm working on, etc. I keep telling myself, man, this is the middle point, Certain timelines, this is the incipient phase. This is step one of certain timelines in my life. I can't sit here and judge it and be upset about it, because that's how you never make it to, your goal, is because you judged it halfway through and gave up because you said, shit, this didn't work. But you might not be done yet, And I guess you're never really done. It's like, if you can continue to look at where you're at as a middle point along your journey, I think it gives me at least the ability to be like, okay, cool, I'm just going to do the next step. Maybe this step doesn't currently look how I thought it would look, but I don't know what the eventual end is yet. And I'm a person that tries to be very intentional about believing that the eventual ending is going to be magnificent. I really believe that. Even when it don't look that way, I just think that my purpose, is grand, and that it will be wonderful, even if it doesn't feel like that right now. And that helps me. Yeah, my mom's actually from upstate New York, and my pops is from Ghana. And those roots, they shape my identity in different ways. I wrote a song the other day that might be on my new album, where I was saying, my family tree is the oppressed and the oppressor, those who murdered the natives and those who came on a ship like the Nebuchadnezzar. Because I saw my mom's family tree, and it's like, man, them motherfuckers came here like the 1600s. So, they was up to no good. And like in the War of 1812, or there was like some American Indian War that I saw, like I have an ancestor that was in. And obviously on my father's side, I'm African. And So that's two very conflicting in ways identities. Um, is to have that European ancestry and that African ancestry. Sometimes when I've done like energy work with different healers, they'd be like, yeah, that contributes to a lot of the mental conflict and emotional conflict, spiritual conflict that you felt in your life is just that ancestry. And I think growing up, there were a lot of times when I felt really frustrated about it. I felt like, damn, man, can't I just be black or be white? You know what I'm saying? Like trying to do all this shit at once, um, and just not necessarily being accepted in either race. But I feel like growing up and realizing that race is a social construct, and it's like it's imaginary and subject to change. Like in America, for the most part, I'm pretty definitively black. You don't know, that I have a white mom, or the police see me, they don't ask, before assaulting me. Um, my experience in America is that of what we call a black man, for the most part. But then if I go to Ghana, I remember I was in Ghana about to go out one night to go get some food. It's like 9 p.m. And the brother who worked in the house, he was like, please do not go. And I'm like, man, why? He's like, it's late. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go outside now. He's like, Ghanaians, they don't like when white people walk around at night. And I'm like, white people, me? But it's just like, it speaks to how subject to change racial identities are based on where you are. Then I go to South Africa and they think I'm colored. And that's an entirely different class. So I think overall, I don't I don't wholeheartedly believe in race. It's like many parts of culture are significant to me, and my loved ones are significant to me. But I think having like the conflicting or sometimes contradicting even like ancestries, it gives me an ability to relate to different people. It's like I still get judged when I walk in a room. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm me. I look how I look. So that makes people react in a certain kind of way. But I think at the end of the day, it's like I really know how to relate to people of different races because I am a person of different races. I think I would say that in the last 5 years, from like 2020 to now, that I've immersed myself in understandings of black identities globally much more than I did in the past. From about 2020 to now, I started spending a lot of time back in Ghana, going out to Ethiopia and South Africa and Senegal, and using my position as a conduit between different cultures to like bridge a gap between the diaspora globally and in America. Because I know, not that both sides, because it's not a monolith and it's not a two sides of the coin situation, but like I have a unique perspective in that I can build those bridges. You know what I'm saying? Because I exist in both worlds, and my life, by and large, is here. Most of my loved ones are on the south side of Chicago, and like one of the most specifically black experiences. Just that it's like Chicago is this scapegoat for like all of the ills and problems, the burdens of America through the lens of the black man, in a way. Whenever something goes wrong, they'd be like, man, look at Chicago. Chicago is the example. It's the scapegoat for so many of America's issues. And those are pinned on black people, on black men specifically. And so I know that intimately well, but at the same time, I'm Ghanaian, so I also know that world well, and I try to bring them together. Like I said, race, it starts to disintegrate to me the more I really learn, and that's not to say that like I care less about black people or the contributions of black people to everything from math, science, technology, art, music, culture, everything. But I don't wholeheartedly believe in it, and I don't even really talk about that much because people are uh, so enveloped in racial identity, and I get it. That identity means so much to people, and so I don't really go on a campaign to like try to disintegrate anybody else's understanding of their identity, but just for me, although it seems like I'm very concerned with black issues and I speak about them a lot, and I think about them a lot because I do, because they're my reality. I also just don't fully believe in like the idea black, white, because it's not all the way factual. It's like black American culture is this hugely influential, impactful force globally, and that is a very real thing. But to synthesize all these different cultures and identities that were stolen from black American people and all these different, um, you know, ethnicities and tribal identities, etc., that are just flattened into black, which black American also includes a lot of white too. Like that's a quintessential part of the black American experience. But that's like a mind fuck. Niggas don't even want to admit that. Like, do you do your 23 and me? Motherfuckers is just holding. They like, oh shit, just make me more than goddamn 50%. Like, because that's a hard pill to swallow. You know, that's real, and white is just as fictitious too, because that shit changes based on the times. Italians came, they wasn't white. But now the way they treat niggas, they gotta be some of the whitest people, you know? Like, none of it is really real. That's how I feel at least. Man, how I really started acting, it was a pretty cool story. I was in the south of France at Cannes Film Festival, and I'm walking across the beach, and my man, he just seen a dude walking in this all Rick Owens silhouette. And he's like, bruh, is that most up? I was like, chances are yes. And it did turn out to be Yassine Bey. He was with Common, and so we just kicking it with them all night, just like going from spot to spot, kicking it on a boat, whatever you do when you in Cannes and shit. And I remember talking to Common and just asking him about how he made that transition. He was just telling me, man, I studied the craft. You got to study the craft the same way that you study hip hop. Like, I'm a consummate student of music, of hip hop in particular. And that was like 2018. So I think I started taking acting classes not long after that with a woman named Diana Castle. I think she might have worked with Common early in his career, and Andre 3000, some of the other like goated MCs that also have done brilliant things in film and TV, etc. Um, I just started taking acting classes. Went and took an improv class, started taking acting classes. Um, I did like an indie film with Saul Williams that there wasn't much acting in it. I think I was just like holding a gun and like I was in a shootout, but just like started taking action. I'll say, started taking action because this is something that I really wanted, and it was like maybe that was 2018. I started taking acting classes, and at the same time, I had a lot of drama going on. Like in many ways, like my fucking like life was falling apart, and I was like getting locked up and beefing with all type of people and shit. And it took some time, but I do remember like when I got a more significant role in The Shy, it was one day, maybe in 2022 or 2023, and I read the script and I saw that they actually gave me scenes of emotional depth and emotional weight, and it made me emotional because I was like, damn, bro, like I've been through so much since I set out to say I was gonna do this for real, and to actually have an opportunity, um, it brought me to pretty intense emotions. I was like, man, I've been fucking struggling, you know, and having that opportunity was a beautiful manifestation. You know, when you've been really grinding for something and praying for it to come through in a major way, when you reach those moments, um, it can be pretty weighty, and so that was what it was like for me uh, when acting roles like started to be real. You know, how do I relate to my character Jamal on The Shy? In many ways, you know, I think Jamal's story is one of redemption and reinvention, which has so many parallels to my own story as Vic. I spent a lot of time thinking about Jamal's time incarcerated and not knowing if he'd ever be free again, praying for love, praying for family. And in those moments, I go into my own periods of incarceration, you know, when I'm doing that character development. I think about how I felt, being in a cell and praying for the same things, like praying for family and praying for love and, you know, finding that, having a child, praying for those things when I was at my lowest moments. And in so many ways, that's Jamal's situation too. Um, what's different from me to Jamal? Jamal is like he's clunky, he's heavy-handed. I won't say that I'm not those things at all, but like everything's funny to me. You know what I mean? I'm way more like of a jokester than Jamal. Jamal is pretty serious. I don't even remember the last time that nigga made a joke. You know what I'm saying? Like he on his born again Christian shit, which ain't worlds away from what I'm on. You know what I mean? I'm a Muslim, and in a lot of ways, low key, I feel like being a Muslim and being specifically one of those like born again type of Christians has some parallels because being a Muslim is a pretty serious dedication to make. I'm not raised Muslim, um, but being an active Muslim, like on your deen, it's like, man, you can't drink. You ain't supposed to be like doing certain things in a romantic sense. So you just really got to be on point. Um, and that's honestly how Jamal's situation is, especially in this season. Like Jamal ass, he's so goddamn born again. He like, I won't even have sex because I'm like, you know. But I've been there. I was celibate for maybe like 8 months. That was a while back, um, but you know what I'm saying. I pull on those things. You know what I mean, when I'm working on my character as Jamal. Um, I think it's really the jokes part though. Like everything funny to me. His ass is so serious, bro. And then he proposed to his girl like, who else is gonna want to marry us? Like that's some goof ass shit to say. You know what I mean? Like, I have much more finesse than Jamal does. But I still obviously relate in so many ways. When I was celibate, I just wanted to show myself that I could choose my behaviors, that I could be in control of my body, and that I've stopped drinking before, I've stopped smoking, I've stopped using drugs, I've changed my diet. I didn't want to feel like sex was an arena where I had no control because I also like have a history of sex addiction, you know what I'm saying, and many addictions. And addictions, they all carry the same DNA. You're always trying to fill a hole emotionally with something external. And so sex in my life has often been that for me. And, in that period of celibacy, I was just proving to myself that I could be in control and not be controlled by my compulsions. And I thought it was funny because, like, women was not honoring that shit. Like, I tried to tell this girl I'm celibate until April or something because it was like a deadline I had. And she's like, well, what about April 15th, Man, it's not even where I'm at with it. But I don't know, it's like it's funny because even this season is very sexual for me at least. It's like my first time doing something like that, or like many people see me in this sexual way, and like at this point in my life, I'm really not even like a very sexual person at all. You know what I mean? It's not something that is a big part of my life, and I think having my my history sexually be so intertwined with like addiction and shit like that, since I've been on a whole different page, I'm not even all the way like as comfortable, with sex because it was always Hennessy involved. Like without Hennessy, I'm not as interested, to be honest. But I feel like it's probably just seasons in life, though. You know what I'm saying? Like I learned about this concept called anhedonia recently. It's the inability to experience pleasure, and it's often developed by overactivity in the pleasure centers because the brain's pleasure center is one that takes pleasure from, you know, drugs or alcohol or skydiving or riding a motorcycle or sex or um, if you're somebody like me, fighting or something like that. You know what I mean? It's all playing with the same part of the brain. And people that have been super thrill seekers can kind of be numbed, like develop this anhedonia where they don't have as much of an ability to experience pleasure. Because I always felt like it had to be real extreme for me. And so right now, I feel like I'm kind of rewiring my brain to be more peaceful, you know what I mean? And like find joy and pleasure in simple things. And so sometimes I can feel a little, a little numb, but I think it's just where I'm at right now, because I feel it coming back. Now, basic experiences of life start to be pleasurable to me, like being in the sun or hiking, you know what I mean? I don't know, I guess it's like 30 and shit, being 30, you know what I'm saying? That's a long-winded way to say I'm 32, fam. Like, this shit not the same. Me getting shot. I mean, shit, I was actually in Chirac, man. That Spike Lee movie. Um, God awful fucking film. I got shot in the first scene, so I'm like I've been here before. You know what I mean? I remember I tried to weasel out of that movie too, Like I went back to the dressing room like, man, maybe if I just don't sign the paperwork, they'll take me out of this terrible shit. Um, and yeah, so I'm like, man, I got shot before. I've done music videos for sure where like you have squibs and the experience of getting shot. So I wasn't really tripping because I could see that I didn't die too. Everybody was thinking I died. If I had thought I died, I'd have been like, damn, that's it, huh? Time to pack it up. But I knew I wasn't gonna die, so I wasn't really mad about getting shot. I did kind of want to go back to the streets though. I'm like, man, let me get back in the streets, bruh. They gonna shoot me and all type of shit. Let me get back in the streets. But I think it's like mental gymnastics and character development to be like, man, I killed somebody though. You know, maybe this is my karma returning to me. I shot somebody, and so in my emotional development in the shot, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like remorse for the person that I killed, and that often contributes to the way that I look at forgiveness as Jamal. I think the shy humanizes Chicago, shows the emotional depth to the experiences that we have. Yeah, there's extreme levels of violence, but there's also love and family and companionship and humor like all wrapped up into one empathetic human experience. But it is real though. I remember when we were doing a scene where I got shot. We were like damn near not far from where I grew up, like in the hood on the low end. And you don't supposed to be on 47th Street pretending to shoot a motherfucker for 12 hours on a summer night, you know. Eventually, niggas actually did shoot, you know. Somebody drove by shooting, you know what I'm saying? Because it was just like, this is where we at. You really, you don't really do that, you know. I thought that was interesting. I was like, damn, we are really doing this in Chicago right now, you know. Nobody got hurt. It wasn't related to the show at all, but it was kind of like a testament to like, okay, this is in ways like a real depiction of Chicago, but in many ways also it's dramatized, you know. Um, and I love that they lean into characters. It's all about investment in the characters. You see how people react when Emmett got shot. They're like, man, if Emmett don't wake up, we not watching that shit no more, because they love Emmett, you know. And you got people like that though. That's a real every hood USA experience where you got like a good dude that has his flaws, um, and family and loved ones, but everybody loves this guy, and those people get shot too, you know, or those people get into things they don't need to get into. Because he did go over there and put hands on Reg. Reg is a killer, so that's only gonna go one kind of way. So then Reg say some real shit to Jake, and Reg was like, "Man, don't you ever run up on somebody that you're not ready to kill." Now Bart is the most. He's the most authentic to me, like Chicago representation on the show. That's not to say anybody else, is not real or that I don't respect and appreciate everybody's talent. But I do think that Bart, to me, feels the most like when he's in that character. Bart's a fucking thespian. You know what I mean? He's not like a, street nigga for real. You know what I'm saying? I don't know his whole history, but he's like a student of the craft of theater. But in that role on that screen, I can't tell the difference. I can't tell. Lala Anthony is professional. Somebody's been doing this for so long. She's just kind to everybody on the set. Like, kind of takes the young girls under her wing, and it's an absolute pleasure working with her. When I said black excellence is a scam, my critique was not so much with the terminology. Obviously, we all want to strive for excellence in our ways, and collectively. I was more so addressing the hyper obsession with black capitalism overall, with the accrual of capital as being the highest ideal. I think that our culture can be real cheerleaders for people that are like corrosive to the people in the name of, yeah, like stacking money. It's money over everything. And I don't believe in that ultimately. But it's like, uh, it's a conundrum, because I'm still like of the same ilk. I'm American. I live in a capitalist society. I want to acquire capital. I want to be straight. I want my family to be straight. But growing up also makes me start to ask at what cost too. Like, I don't want to do certain businesses because they're of a detrimental value to the masses, to the people. If I could make a bag right now investing in privatized prisons, I can't do it. You know what I mean? If I could make a bag right now, like by disenfranchising millions, I'm just not gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? And when I was criticizing black excellence, it's more so that idea that as long as you got rich, bravo. You know, I think that we remove like the necessary dimension of accountability from each other. When there's a dollar sign next to it, it's like it don't matter how you got there. But that's the American way, man. And like the American way, in so many ways, is directly tied to the destruction of black bodies and the destruction of the African way. You can't dislodge capitalism from slavery. Slavery was the determining factor that cemented the capitalist way of life as, this omnipresent system by which all must adhere. And my father, he's an economist. So he's like, man, capitalism, it works, it does work because of XYZ. And pragmatically, I understand it, but at least at this point in my life, I'm like, it's hard for me to really subscribe to it because I'm like, man, this comes along with our destruction, So I guess I still want to believe that there's a better way. Unifying is the only way that I can see black people really succeeding in America. Obviously, we can individually succeed through our own industriousness, our own discipline, our own mastering of AI. You know what I mean? Like, there's many ways that you or I can succeed, but for us as a group to succeed, that's going to take the one very difficult thing that we've been programmed against, and that's like real collaboration and unity. That's the only way, because separate, we're so susceptible to being picked off like flies. You see, whenever we speak against like bastions of culture or certain things, man, it just cuts you off, man. Just cut your water off, cut your lights off. But other groups, when they experience some targeting, man, they call the UN and they say, you know what I mean? We about to pull these dollars out of your economy unless you pass a law tomorrow to protect us. And that takes unity. Black people have such tremendous wealth, even though the, average family wealth is very low compared to other groups. There's still a tremendous dollar amount wielded by black people. But the fact of the matter is that it's going into somebody else's hands most of the time. It's always leaving. It's always leaving the community. You know what I'm saying? If we could keep our money amongst ourselves to a more substantial degree and economically unified, then things would improve. Black men need therapy. That's how I feel. Everybody does.